Hi, I'd like to provide an update on ARTnet Scientific Committee activities. And in fact, in this next section of the presentation, I'll be talking about the ARTnet Scientific Committee, followed by Professor Michael Hoffman talking about clinical trials in prostate cancer, Professor Andrew Scott giving us an update on the FIG and IFIR studies. That'll be followed by Stuart Ramsey speaking about expert quant cardiac amyloid projects. I'll come back and speak about future opportunities in ARTnet, and then we hope to have an open discussion. The ARTnet Scientific Committee is seen listed here and has very broad representation and skill set, for which we're very grateful, and thank you to everybody involved for your contribution to the ARTnet Scientific Committee. I'd like to have a special shout out for our ARTnet project officer, Olga Kovachev. Olga makes an incredible contribution to ARTnet, and she's been involved since the very beginning from 2014, and we're incredibly grateful for all of her hard work. We've had new committee members appointed. Dr. Kathy Willowson and George McGill have been appointed as physics representation on the ARTnet Scientific Committee, and I'd like to extend a thank you to Dr. Daniel Badger for his contribution to ARTnet as he stepped down from the committee and Kathy and George have stepped on. In 2021-2022, the ARTnet Scientific Committee has had 4 meetings, all done remotely. There's been a number of scientific activities undertaken, review and endorsement of a number of clinical trial protocols, some of which are listed here, and a number of other research proposals, many of which have been submitted for grant funding. And also, as part of those research proposals, the ARTnet Committee has provided feedback and scientific input into those proposals. ARTnet provides ongoing advice and support for clinical trials, and the ARTnet Scientific Committee has oversight of the clinical trial quality activities of ARTnet, including review and development of ARTnet manuals, the ARTnet camera credentialing program, and the ARTnet radiopharmaceutical accreditation program. In terms of the ARTnet camera validation program, I think most people are now familiar with this. This involves an ARTnet NEMA phantom, which is sent to sites, and data required is uploaded to a core lab for analysis. Certification provided is isotope specific and for individual cameras and valid for 2 years. And the certification may be trial specific or a general validation. Over the last 12 months, ARTNet's performed a number of site validations. In total, 14 sites and 16 PET scanners have been validated. And overall, since initiation, 46 sites in Australia have ARTnet validation of PET cameras. ARTnet continues to have discussions internationally with our colleagues in Europe and the USA to look at ways to work collaboratively with the possibility of having international studies facilitated in Australia. ARTnet has a radiochemistry trial certification program with the components of the clinical trial radiopharmaceutical production manuals developed in collaboration with investigators, development of synthesis validation worksheets and batch records. There is the option of site visit as part of clinical trials, and that's trial dependent, and an ARTnet certification process. So having this radiochemistry trial certification program facilitates the ability to have on-site radiopharmaceutical production as part of clinical trials in Australia. This has been important because of our geographic challenges and the very short half-life of some of our radioisotopes. And by having this available, it means that when on-site production is undertaken, it is all harmonised across sites, and this contributes to high-quality trials in Australia, but it also contributes to facilitating the opportunity for sites to be involved in clinical trials that may not otherwise get that opportunity. I think it's also grown our expertise and also our network across sites as we've undertaken these processes. So in terms of accreditation activities in the last 12 months, 7 sites have been accredited, predominantly been around the gallium-68 PSMA, lutetium-177 PSMA for the ENZA-P and upfront studies, but there's also been accreditation for FET as part of the FIG trial. I'd just like to highlight this publication that came out in 2021, which was a hot topics in the Journal of Nuclear Medicine on ARTnet, clinical trials, evidence and opportunity. And this really has come about through the international interest in how ARTnet has developed in Australia, And really, I think the model of ARTnet in Australia is something that internationally is looked upon as being a real positive, and I think has been an absolute strength. So this paper just provides some of that background and has been an opportunity for us to connect internationally with what we're doing in Australia. In terms of impact, we were also very interested to see this editorial came out last year from the Journal of Nuclear Medicine discussing the impact factor, which is now, I think, 10.057 for Journal of Nuclear Medicine. But as we read this article, we were really pleased to see that of the 10 papers that contributed predominantly to this impact factor, one of them that was listed here was in fact the management impact paper that came out, published by Paul Roach et al., and this was the paper that showed that PSMA PET was associated with a 51% change in management intent in patients. And it's been a highly cited paper, and interestingly, it's contributed to the Journal of Nuclear Medicine's impact factor, which is obviously very pleasing. And along those lines, I just wanted to highlight the impact that the Pro-PSMA clinical trial has had. This study, led by Michael Hoffman, commenced in 2017, recruited well ahead of target, had results published in The Lancet in 2020, was nominated for and awarded the ACTA Clinical Trial of the Year in 2021, and now we're really pleased that MSAC reviewed PSMA PET imaging, recommended it for funding, and that funding has been announced for the 1st of July this year. So this was the Pro-PSMA paper published in The Lancet. This was followed by a publication of the cost-effectiveness of PSMA PET imaging, and these studies are in newly diagnosed prostate cancer. So when MSAC reviewed PSMA PET in the setting of both intermediate high risk newly diagnosed prostate cancer and also biochemical relapse, it has recommended for funding, and as I say, this was announced that it will be implemented from the 1st of July. Importantly, also, clinical trials such as Pro-PSMA are really important for funding, which is obviously critical, but also for the way we manage patients and to be integrated into clinical care pathways, such as the European guidelines in prostate cancer. So ARTnet continues to remain busy and supporting research, but it really couldn't happen without a huge amount of collaboration. Obviously, I'm really grateful to the ARTnet Scientific Committee members who work incredibly hard. There's often a lot to cover off within our meetings, but all of this is only possible thanks, as I say, to a lot of collaboration. So we're really grateful to investigators with a vision and willingness to undertake these multi-centre studies in Australia and to work with ARTnet and to work with sites to have made these trials happen and to be of extremely high quality. It's really important to have engagement with many disciplines, and we've had really strong engagement from a number of disciplines across oncology, radiation oncology, urology and multiple areas, and we're very grateful for that. There's a number of clinical trials groups which have been incredibly supportive of ARTnet and ARTnet activities, such as ANZUP, TROG, COGNO, ALLG, a whole range of different clinical trials groups, and we're really pleased to be collaborating with them and playing our role. And we're very grateful to the nuclear medicine sites across Australia who have so willingly worked together on these studies. So thank you, all of you, for your enthusiasm, support and collaboration. And I'm going to hand over now to Professor Michael Hoffman. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Karen Jones, the current chair of the Executive Committee of ARTnet, and I'll be giving you a brief update from our committee. This is an overview of what I'll be discussing this morning. I plan to briefly outline the organisational structure of ARTnet, introduce you to the current committee members on the executive, discuss the role of our committee and our current objectives, before handing over to Ros Francis, the chair of the scientific committee. As many of you are aware, ARTnet, which was launched at the ANZ-SNM annual scientific meeting in Adelaide in 2014, is a joint venture initiative between the two organisations, the AANMS and the ANZ-SNM. ARTnet comprises an executive committee and a scientific committee, And as I mentioned, I will only be speaking on behalf of the Executive Committee today. ARTnet was created with the aim of developing a network of radiopharmaceutical imaging and therapy sites across Australia to facilitate collaborative clinical research. It has representation by both the parent organisations on the committees, and within the executive, the chair and deputy chair roles rotate annually between the AANMS and the ANZSNM. Now, not being a legal entity is associated with some limitations, with implications relating to financial management and insurance, and any major decisions that need to be approved by both the AANMS and the ANZSNM. These are the faces of the current members of the Executive Committee. As I mentioned, I'm the current chair of the Executive and I sit on the Federal Council of the ANZSNM. For those of you that don't know me, I'm a Senior Research Fellow at the University of Adelaide, and I have over 30 years' experience conducting grant-funded and industry-funded clinical research projects utilising nuclear medicine techniques. Giancarlo Pascali also represents the ANZSNM, and he's the current Deputy Chair of the committee. Ros Francis sits on the committee as Chair of the Scientific Committee, and Paul Thomas and Jeff Shembry represent the AANMS. We are supported by Raj Chandra, General Manager of the ANZSNM, Lisa Maddox, General Manager of the AANMS, and Olga Kovachev, who's the glue in our system as the Project Manager for ARTnet, supporting both the Executive and Scientific Committees. The overarching role of the Executive Committee is to provide governance for ARTnet in accordance with its mission and vision. And these are listed here on this slide, however, I don't plan to go through these today. Our role is to develop and review necessary contracts or agreements, to develop and manage financial budgets for ARTnet, the development of a strategic plan, the promotion of ARTnet to the wider community, to support the Scientific Committee to achieve the vision of ARTnet, and of course to act as the liaison with the AANMS and the ANZSNM. These are our current objectives for 2022. They include revising our current mission statement and vision. These have served us well, but they haven't been revised since the inception of ARTnet. We plan to implement a set of values that reflect ARTnet and to develop a strategic plan. While ARTnet's been extremely successful establishing a strong national and international reputation, ARTnet's never had a formal strategic plan. Spike Milligan once said, "We haven't got a plan so nothing can go wrong," but a strategic plan does allow us to provide transparency, to document what we consider important, to set goals and to review outcomes. So this is something that we hope to achieve by the end of the year. We need to implement a formalised budget for 2022, review the joint venture agreement between the AANMS and ANZSNM because this is due to expire at the end of the year, to update the ARTnet website, and Olga's currently in the process of developing a document repository where all members of the Executive and Scientific Committee can easily access previous meeting minutes and historical documents. So before I hand over to Ros, I'd just like to take the opportunity to thank the members of the Executive who've warmly welcomed me onto this committee. I've only been on the committee for about 6 months and I really appreciate their support, and I'd like to thank you for listening.